It's great to be back in Citrus County. I missed you guys. And so here we are, and I appreciate you inviting me back, especially when we're honoring small businesses here in the local area. When I looked at what we could talk about today, a lot of things came to mind, and I thought we would start off from the beginning. It's a question that I get, not only at our center in Orlando, which houses 11 different business support organizations. People go there for free to get free coaching. We have low-cost business seminars and networking. Last year, those 11 organizations under that one roof coached and trained face-to-face over 10,000 business people. We touched over 130,000 business people. And so I thought, what are most people asking? When people come in the door, what is it that they want to know? And they want to know what happened. Over the last few years, they've been saying, what's going on? What happened? And I thought, you can take your pick. A lot happened. And so a few years ago, when the legislature in Tallahassee was talking about rearranging and changing property taxes, everyone that you would talk to would say, you know, we can't do anything, property taxes. And you would say, well, why can't you do anything? Well, property taxes. Until we know what property taxes are going to be, we really can't do anything. And pretty soon, everything in the whole business community became about property taxes. And so then property taxes happened, and people said, well, I can't do anything now because, property taxes. Really? And then you'd wake up and it was a rainy day in Orlando, Florida, and people would say, yeah, property taxes. And so it's a way of thinking that happens, and one or two of those kind of slow things down. When you start talking about recessions and inflation, and you start talking about bailouts and wars, you go home and you say, I want to turn it off. Well, as business people, what happens when all of those things happen? Fear and uncertainty. People say, you know what? That's a lot going on. And so maybe I won't hire someone. Maybe I won't expand. Fear and uncertainty starts coming up. And so people start to say, let's slow down. Let's maybe wait on that one. And so our entire economy, because with inflation and recession, the things that you do to solve inflation are exactly the things that you don't want to do if you have a recession. Remember $4 a gallon gasoline? It's not that far away. Remember it was $5? That's inflation. Remember what your house used to be worth? That's deflation. And so the things that you do to help one hurts the other. And we were having them both. And so there's this fear and uncertainty in the marketplace because who knows what your taxes are going to be, or whether the taxes are going to expire at the end of the year, and what's going to happen with health care, and what are the health care costs going to be. And what happens is then we say, I'm afraid. I'm very afraid, and I'm uncertain of what to do. And so how do you make a business decision when you're afraid and uncertain? You don't. You make a decision to pause. And so for the last few years, our entire economy has pushed the pause button. Now, I'm still getting my hair cut, obviously. I'm still eating, obviously. Business is still happening. But those things that drive an economy have slowed down, especially the small businesses, especially the ones that are the foundation of all of our communities across this country, including Citrus County. These numbers came from the Edward Lowe Foundation and the Kauffman Foundation. I speak all over the country, and I've got to tell you that these numbers vary a little bit, but it's usually just a few percentage points. These are the same kinds of numbers that we see all over the country. Why did we have an unemployment problem? Well, all new net jobs come from small businesses, 0 to 5 years old. And so we're talking about net jobs. Now, so you hear about 2,000 people being hired at Ford, and then you hear 2,500 people being laid off at Chrysler. That's a net job loss of 500 jobs. And so while we like to remember the 2,000, the net job growth is not coming from the big guys. Net job growth comes from small businesses. Because by our very nature, we're inefficient. We don't have all the technology, so we hire people to do those jobs. I worked with a client that was trying to sell to Walmart. They were hiring people to fill plastic bags, fold them over, and staple them, because they needed to fill the order for Walmart to keep the business. In a few years, they're going to have enough money to buy a staple machine. Right now, they're hiring people to do that. We're inefficient as small businesses, and we need people. And that's where the new net jobs come from. Why do we have an unemployment problem? In each of the last 5 years, there's been 150,000 fewer small businesses started. They used to hire 7.5 people, and now they hire 4.9. That's 1 million jobs that went away, and we need to create 3 million jobs a year just to stay even with growth. Half of those businesses fail in the first 5 years because they're failing faster, because it's harder. Getting capital is much harder. Competing in a marketplace where people are on pause is much harder. So, what does that mean to small businesses in Florida? Over 90% of the businesses in Florida have less than 10 employees. We are a small business state. Those small businesses produce about 38% of the jobs in Florida. Now, 6% of the businesses in Florida have 10 to 100 employees, and they produce 29% of the jobs. That's a huge percentage of jobs for a very small percentage of the companies. So anything we can do as a state, as a county, as a community to accelerate a small business into that second stage, we get an exponential increase in jobs. Anything we can do to move those businesses and accelerate and help them move forward, we get jobs. Here locally, we just talked about the county and the EDC working together and joining the Tampa Bay Partnership to collaborate regionally to help small businesses accelerate. That's what we need to do collectively. The SBA identifies a small business as less than 500 employees. 99% of the jobs in Florida, or the businesses in Florida that are headquartered here, have less than 100. We are a small business state, and small business is under 100. So, what can you do today about it? I didn't come here to rain on a parade, but I needed to start with the reality of what it is we're dealing with, because once you know what we're dealing with, it starts to put other things in perspective. And so, what can you do today with all of that negative news? The easiest way to generate cash flow is to cut your expenses. Because if you want to make $100 and you cut $100 worth of expenses, $100 drops to your bottom line. If you try to sell your way out of $100, you may have to sell $500 in order to get a profit margin that gives you $100. And so the easiest way to generate cash today, this afternoon, is to go home and pull out your phone bill. Research says that about half of all phone bills are wrong. I didn't believe it. I'm $40 a month richer now, because I found $40 every month that was in my phone bill that I was paying that I didn't have to. And so they said, well, you're on the wrong plan. I said, that would have been helpful information a year ago. But they're not going to call you up and say, we think you're on the wrong plan. You have to do that. And if you do that, half of you will find you've got some cash there. But you know what? There are other places too. You need to look around, because when times are good, we tend to spend money on things that we deserve. When times are tough, you need to start looking at those things that you say, I can do without that. At one point, I had 3 cell phones. You know, this was for the family, this one was for the business, and this one was for the speaker engagements, right? We went to the beach. On my swimsuit, I had 3 cell phones. And my wife looked at me and said, really? We're going to do this? And I thought, no, we're not. And then I thought, I don't need that. We have technology that can allow you to identify who's calling, right? Use technology and you can reduce your cost. How much does it cost you to advertise on Facebook? It's free. It's my favorite word. What about Twitter? It's free. It's my favorite word. Now the problem with that, you can reach a whole bunch of people, but they can talk about you too. And so it used to be that 7 people would tell somebody if they had a negative experience, and 2 people would tell if they had a positive experience. Now it's 7 million that they can tell. But it's free. The other thing is that when you use Twitter and Facebook, have you ever tried to track them down? My Twitter account went away. You can't find them. They don't exist anywhere. You can't call them and you can't write them. There's nothing. If you check it out, it ain't there. So I did some real investigation. I found out where they were, and they wouldn't call me back. So I started calling the neighbors in the building and saying, would you go down and ask Twitter to call me? And they called me because my account went away, and I couldn't ask for my money back because it was free. So while it's good, while there's not an expense there, while you can get a whole lot of reach, you got to realize you're getting what you pay for. So don't rely on that solely, but if you're not using online resources, you're not engaging the marketplace like you could this afternoon. You can do that immediately. Add value. A lot of times when people say, it's a tough time, I'm going to cut my price so that I can get more business. Let's talk about profit margin. If you sell something for 100 bucks and you have, let's say a 15% profit margin. You sell for 100 bucks, it costs you 85 to provide the product, and you make 15, right? If you cut your price, just say 10%, now you're selling the price of the product at 90. Your cost didn't change, they're still 85. And so now instead of making 15 bucks, you're making 5. You've got to do 200% more in volume just to get back to even. And so what happens is when people start cutting their price and there's no differentiation between you and somebody else down the street, it's just a race to the bottom. And so you're cutting price, and then they cut their price, and then you cut your price, and they cut your price, and then they have a going out of business sale, and then you have a going out of business sale. That didn't help anybody. Add value. So look around and say, what is it that we can do that really doesn't cost that much? That will say, yes, we're like them, but we also do this. And that's added value. How do you search when you look for an airplane seat? When you go on Google and you search airlines, what do you sort by? Price, right? That's because we don't see any difference in airlines. It's become a cab ride with altitude. And so if that's what it is, then we sort by price. And so if you're getting beat up by price, that's because they don't see a difference in what you're doing in the person down the street. But when Virgin Air comes along and says, we're going to massage your feet and give you real silverware, you say, might be worth a few bucks more. Differentiation. Add value, don't cut your price. Reconnect with your clients. You know, a lot of times when there's fear, what do? We hunker down. We go to work and we walk in looking at the stairs and we look at our desk and we wonder why the phone's not ringing, and we start to contract. Call your clients. Call them and say, what's going on with you? We're looking for new business. Are you doing anything? And some of them are. And they're going to say, I can't believe you called. And they'll pick up business because you know what? They're the easiest business to get today because they've done business with you before. They know you and they like you. Go through your client list and call them all. Say, I heard this crazy guy speak today and he told me to call you, and just say, what are you doing? And they're going to say, what do you mean, what am I doing? Are things going well? Are things going tough? And you know, by about the 4th or 5th call, you're going to start hearing what's happening in the community. And on the 7th or 8th call, you can say, you know what? Down the road, they're doing something that might help you. And we start connecting. Just like the county's doing. Just like the city's doing, to say, how do we make it easier for others to do that? That's our job too, as small business people. Engage your employees. If you're afraid and you're uncertain, you can bet they are too. Because when you come in and go, oh my gosh, things are tough, I don't know how we're going to stay in business. I mean, we're going to try to make payroll, but I don't really know. What I'm saying is I better brush off my resume, because if he's thinking that, he knows more than I do. She knows more than I do. And so engage your employees, because if you're scared, they are too. If you're uncertain, they are too. And so I've had meetings where I've called this team in and said, it's tough out there. Who do you know that can use our stuff? It's tough out there. Who do you know that might be able to help us? Who could we partner with? And what do you know about this business where we could save money and cut cost? I had a program that we called Gimme 5. And so I went to every one of the department managers and said, give me 5% back. Find 5% in your department and give it back. Everyone has about 5% that they could say, you know, we could cut that. They started calling our suppliers, just calling our suppliers and saying, look, it's a tough time and we're really working to try to grow the business. Can you give me a 5% discount? We've been a customer for a long time. And most of them would say, sure, we want to keep your business. We made money, 5%. Talk to your employees. They can tell you where to save money in the business. Do business locally. You know, it's real easy to go online. And a lot of times people say, you know what, I can save a few bucks. But you know what? When you want to return it, it's not easy. They make it sound easy. It's just like the guys that says, wait, there's more. I'm all for saving a buck, but there's a time to save our community. And you say, you know what? There are people in this room that could be doing with other people, doing business with other people in this room that would change the community. There was a study out that said if we all went out I think it's 4 times and spent 50 bucks each time, and all of us did that, we wouldn't be in a recession. It's just little things multiplied by a lot of people. And so consider doing business locally. I just heard about a car dealership that redid and invested in this community. You know, when you're looking to buy a car, give them a shot. Go look at them. Look to buy locally. In Orlando, we started a buy local campaign. You know, some of this, not all my ideas are good. I used to have brown hair. You're going to hear about a few of the good ones. They're not all good. And so that's my wife's job, to pick out which ones are crazy and which ones are okay. We did a buy local campaign, and we gave out 80,000 buy local cards. They started going to local businesses to say, do you have a discount for this? And it's still going today, and we started it 3 years ago. But it wasn't started with a lot of money. It wasn't started with a lot of thought. It was started with a lot of people that said, let's work together to support our community. Those are things you can do today. Here's some things that I think we're missing across the country. I was out in Arizona. I did their economic development convention out there. They had angel investors, and they had venture capitalists, and they had all these people talking about things that I was going, wow. But you know what they weren't talking about? Small business. And I showed them that slide with all the numbers. Their numbers are just the same, and they thought, we've missed it. We need to work with our small businesses as state legislators, as federal legislators, as counties. We need to support and develop our small business communities. But as entrepreneurs, we need to have fire, fuel, and focus. We need to get it back, because that's what made us entrepreneurs. That's what made us small businesses. We're missing fire, fuel, and focus. And that's what I want to get to today. Fire, you got to have the spark of an idea. You got to have something that's going to work. You got to have time to think. Because sometimes we're so busy, we're just busy. Have you ever had one of those days where you got home and you said, I've been busy all day, but I couldn't tell you anything I got done? I'm glad I'm not the only one. I'll start to research for like today's talk. I'll go online and start researching topics and data. And I'll say, ooh, that looks interesting. That's really not what I'm supposed to do, but that's really interesting. I'll print that. This is really interesting. I'll print that. And then pretty soon it says, printer's out of paper. And I think, now I haven't printed the stuff I need, so let me go over here and I'll get some paper. Well, if I'm going, I'll take my coffee mug. Wow, that's some stuff going on in there. And I get to the break room and I'm scrubbing out my coffee mug to get some coffee, and the coffee pot's empty. And so now I got to make some coffee. And I finally get over and I get to the paper storage and no paper. And so I go and take Bob's paper out of his printer and I put it in mine. And then it's lunchtime. We get so busy with activity that we forget about accomplishment. You've got to take time to think about what it is you need to accomplish. And not all those things that come on your desk are the same priority. Because that's what drains our fire. And you know, they tell you you're supposed to have visual aids. Fire. No, there's a fire marshal in here, right? I'm not going to light it. That's what takes away our fire. Those little things every day that you say, you know what? I thought I was in here to do business, and all I've done is worry about that we're out of paper. It's those little things. It's the 5 whys. People will say, well, we can't do that. Why? Because of this. Why? Toyota had a 5 why campaign that they said you need to ask why at least 5 times to find the source of every problem. Why can't we do that? We just can't. Why? Because you have to order it 2 weeks in advance. Why? Because this supplier says they need 2 weeks notice before they'll ship anything. Why? This is not a surprise. We order this all the time because they don't want to inventory for us. Why? You'll get to the sort of the problem, but it's those kinds of things that drain your fire. You need a fire in the belly. It's not good enough just to have a good idea. There's got to be some fire in the belly to do this because it's not easy. Sometimes you have to step back and say, why are we doing this? I run a nonprofit organization. I got to raise money to keep the doors open. I've got 11 different organizations under that one roof. They all have boards of 10 people. There's 130 opinions on anything that we decide to do, and I got to raise the money, and they will point out everything I'm doing wrong. And we coached and trained 10,000 business people face-to-face last year and touched 130,000. And I step back and say, okay, that's tough, but why are we doing this? We're helping a lot of people. It's a tough time. Your kids are watching you. They're watching how you deal with a tough time. And when you say, you know what? That's why I'm doing this. I'm helping people. I'm putting food on the table. I got run off the road in I-4, and I had a searchlight business. The lights that light up the shuttle on the launch pad at night, those are mine. The lights that you see in the sky at Disney, those were mine. In the Titanic, when they go to the ship, and you see that beautiful sunbeam coming through the water, I know you probably missed it, but it was great. And it paid really well. I was in that and said, they're watching me. People are watching me. My kids are watching me. And I got run off the road, and my first thought was, all of my employees, if I got killed, wouldn't know how to do this. I'm affecting a lot of people. You're affecting a lot of people. You've got to say, this is why I'm doing it. It's not just to always make a buck. And you know what? You got to protect your flame. Because you'll have the fire in the belly, and then the person comes in and says, you go, how you doing this morning? They say, oh, terrible. I didn't sleep at all last night, and I think I'm getting a cold. And you know what? I just don't like working here. I just can't wait till I can. And you say, whoa. And then they leave and feel better, and they just left that all behind on you. And so here's the saying that I use. I say, hey, don't harsh my mellow. I got that from a 13-year-old girl. She said, don't harsh my mellow. And I said, can I steal that saying? She said, yeah. But it's so different that people go, whoa. And I say, look, just don't harsh my mellow. And they go, okay. And it is a sign to them that they're going there. And you start doing that a few times, and they go, don't go in there and tell him all your bad stuff, because he's protecting his flame. And there's a no judgment zone. People need to have ideas, but they also need to. I have a speaking engagement coming up where it was a corporate Fortune 500 company, and they said, we want our people to be more entrepreneurial thinkers. More entrepreneurial thinkers, huh? We want to empower them to make the decisions. And I said, okay, I think that's good. Have you empowered them to be wrong? Because not all of the decisions are right. And if I empowered to make a decision, and I make the decision and it's wrong and I get hammered, I'm not going to do that anymore. And so if we want our employees to do that, we need to give them the freedom to fail. My board has given me a freedom to fail. They've gone, Jerry, go try it. And sometimes it works, and they go, hooray! And sometimes it doesn't, and they say, note to self, don't do that anymore. But I'm never afraid that I'm going to get fired because I tried something that didn't work. And if you haven't empowered your people, they're not going to try it. And you start doing that, and you know that you know that you know, you start coming up with matches like this. And somebody comes and they try to blow it out and they're going, it ain't happening. Sometimes you got to have a flame this big. It's got to be a flame that burns in you and that people can see it and they say, that's where I'm going. Fuel. You can have a great idea, you can be all excited, you can have fire in the belly, but if you haven't got any fuel, you ain't going anywhere. Capital is tough right now. Businesses are saying, I can't get a loan from the bank. Well, the business loans that the banks used to do were really home equity loans. And if you don't have home equity, they can't make a loan. People say, oh, I'll go to the SBA. Well, the SBA doesn't make loans. They guarantee loans. And so if the bank doesn't want to make the loan, the SBA is not going to guarantee it. And then they said, let's have loans for small business. And they started to make loans for small business. Remember the ones that said you wouldn't have to make a payment for a year that they came up with? Well, as soon as a bank did that, the regulators came in and said, oh, if they don't have to make a payment for a year, this has to be classified as a non-performing asset. So you have to move it over here, which means you have to pull a credit line from a business that's paying their credit line to get your ratios back in order for regulation. It's tough. The banks want a loan. They're not in the risk business. They want to help small businesses. It's tough. Entrepreneurs are starting to say, how else do I raise money? And so there are other ways to raise money. Your friends and neighbors, we call it love money. They're investing in you because they love you. They want you to be successful. But you need to learn their language and say, here's the ROI you'll get if you invest in me. Sometimes people are going online to some of the crowdsourcing sites where people will say, I need 1,000 people to give me $10. And it's happened. And so I'm not endorsing those. I'm just saying it's time for some entrepreneurial thinking. It may be a way to say, you do this and I'll do that and we'll partner together. You have the money, I have the idea. But to go to a bank and go through the process, it's just not happening. And so we've got to find other ways. Connections, you got to leverage today. There are more connections and more experience in this room that can help your business and you're going to see in the next few months. And they're here today. So make the connection. Don't just collect business cards. Talk to people. Don't run out of here after it's over. Stand up and meet somebody new and learn something new from someone that's here. That's a connection you can leverage. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was the only one in the business, I had 2 business cards. I had one with my name and one without my name. And when I would go to big events, if somebody came up, I was prospecting. And if they were never going to use my stuff, and they really were just collecting cards, I gave them the one without my name. Because they would never look at the card, and they would call tomorrow and say to my secretary, I'd like to speak to some guy that I met yesterday, and it was at this event, and what did that tell her? That I'd already prospected them, and they probably weren't going to buy from me. Now, anyone that left a message got a call back. But when someone was a good prospect, and I gave them my card with a name on it, and they called and asked for Jerry and said, I met him yesterday, I knew they were qualified. That little trick got me covered by Jane Applegate, who was an LA Times writer. I was in 55 newspapers across the country, and I sold a bunch of equipment because I told her, this is how I manage my time. Just meeting people and thinking about your time and how you meet people and how you qualify can make this time the most productive time you spend all week. Collaboration. We got to work together. We've just got to work together. We've got to find a way as counties, to work together. The Tampa Bay Partnership has been joined by Citrus County. They're working together as a region because you know what? When a county goes to the state or the county goes to the federal government and says, my county wants this, it sounds a whole lot better when there's about 15 other counties involved. It's just a matter of pull. It's leverage. It's efficient. You've got to start working together as businesses too. You've got to say, I used to do the searchlight business, you know, at the car dealerships, you know, the little four lights. I never did balloons, didn't want to. But I had a guy that did balloons. We worked together. And so if somebody said, I want a light and a balloon, I'd say, I do the lights, he does the balloons. If he went in and said, I want to sell you a balloon, they said, we want balloons and lights, he'd say, he sells you the lights. And we weren't competitors, but we worked really well together. We sold a bunch of business together because we were willing to collaborate. Coaching, you've got SCORE here. You've got the Small Business Development Center with Dr. Geis. Those are organizations that are designed to help you grow your business. And it's free. Use them. You'll get encouragement because you know what? Sometimes you just say, I need somebody to tell me I'm doing something right. This is hard. And the difference between a pat on the back and a kick in the butt is about 12 inches. And so sometimes you need a kick in the butt. And other times you just need somebody to pat you on the back to say, it's going to be okay, get back in the game. It's all right. They're here for you. They will help you grow your business, even in a tough time. And focus. Well, I almost forgot. Don't forget your fuel. Visual aid. Remember, you need to connect with coaching. You need to connect with each other. You need to collaborate. That's the fuel that will drive those ideas. The power and peril of binoculars. We're going to talk about focus. I can see you. You know, binoculars are great because they help you see things that are way down the road. But sometimes they don't allow you to see what's right around you. And so a lot of times we focus just on what's around us and we never see what's coming. Other times we're so busy doing the strategic plan that we don't do anything tactical. That we say, you know what? We have the best mission statement in the country. Okay, what'd you sell? We're going to get to that. We have a committee meeting next week. You got to focus. The power and peril of binoculars. I used to do major events. I did halftime shows of Super Bowls. I did the Olympics. Major events all over the world. And I used to be next to a guy that would show up at these major events and sell a folding cardboard binocular. It wasn't a great binocular, but it was a great advertising piece, and people didn't throw it away, and they bought them going into the stadiums, and I was going, this is amazing, because I had highly paid Xenon technicians that would have to go in and set up like a week before the event, and then do all the dress rehearsals and all the timings and all that stuff, and so they were really highly paid, and they were sitting there for a whole week, and it was on my payroll, and it was expensive, and I didn't want to do it, so I know, I'll have them sell folding cardboard binoculars when they're not busy. And so I had highly paid Xenon technicians standing out in the hot sun at the Atlanta Olympics going, you don't want these crappy old binoculars, do you? Not even a good lens on this thing. And people would say no, and they'd say, told you they wouldn't sell. What was I doing? Where were my advisors to smack me in the head and say, you're not in the binocular business, get out? I was making a decision on something that I shouldn't even have thought about because I wasn't focused. I wasn't focused on what do we do best. We're Xenon lighting technicians. We can throw light 5 miles. We can light up the shuttle. Want to buy a binocular? Crazy. What do you do best? Do you remember? Or have you been growing and changing your business to the point where you say, I don't really know what we do. We do a lot of things, but we don't do anything very well. Now you're competing on price. Focus on your client's needs. They don't really care what you do. They don't. No one ever cared that I had a Xenon light that burned at 5,600 degrees Kelvin with a rhodium reflector. imitated sunlight. They didn't care. What they cared about is I'd say, I'll make people look. They can't drive past 500 million candle power without looking. And isn't that the point of advertising? And they would say, sure is. And I would say, how much you got in your advertising budget? I never found anyone with a Searchlight budget. Found a whole lot of people with an advertising budget because you know what? They didn't care about the Searchlight. They cared about getting noticed, and that's advertising. They don't care that you're in insurance. They care about the safety and security of knowing that if something happens, you're there. So it's not about what you do. It's what you do for them. You're going to focus on profit. Where do you make your money? Do you even know? I was on the board of a roofing company in Ohio. Now, I don't do well with heights. Never really been on a roof. I'm on the board of a roofing company, and I said, you know what, where do you make your money? They said, well, you know, we send out bids, and we bid these contracts, and we did this, and then we take these roofs off, and we put roofs on, and we make money roofing. And so we looked at what they were doing, and they would get a bid for putting a roof on a building. And if it was a union job, the wages were set. There was only about 5 people that you could buy materials from, and all of those materials providers had about the same price. And so, if you only have 3 things, profit, materials, and labor was set, and materials were set, what happens? It's a race to the bottom. Everybody was shrinking their profit margins to say, I want this job. We went over and looked over here and said, you know what? If we take a roof off and re-roof, it's usually not a union job. And so our guys are really good. They could do 2 weeks' work in 3 days. And so they could take off a roof, bid what everybody else was bidding, and doing it about half the time. And so we found out that our profit was in re-roofing, not bidding and beating our head against everybody else over there. And so what did we do? I pulled the building permits of everybody that put a roof on 20 years ago. And we started calling them going, is your roof leaking yet? And they would say, how do you know? These people are amazing. Where do you make your money? You can go out of business selling stuff that doesn't make you money. Where's your money? And that's what you focus on. And then you got to focus on what you control. Some stuff you just don't control. I don't control what happens in Washington. I can vote, but I can't go up there and make them change it today. I can't control Tallahassee. I can't even control my home. I can't tell them what to do and make it happen all the time. What do I control? I can control how I respond to stuff. I can control my attitude. I can control my business. And so take control and say, here's where we're going. Because people are looking for a leader. They're looking for you to take control. Because you know what? There's fear and uncertainty out there. Take control. We're going here, get on board. And when you start including your employees and you have the fire in your belly and you start having that kind of fuel and that kind of focus, people will follow. We're entering the innovation economy. It's changing, but it's changing the world. Facebook wasn't around. My son was laughing at me because I had used a TI 99 computer to write my MBA papers. It had 16K. I was smoking. So he was laughing at me, and I said, you can laugh at me, but Mom did her dissertation on a typewriter with the correction ink. Wasn't that long ago. It's changing. Technology is changing the world. We've got to embrace the change. We've got to say, how do you do this stuff? Bob Shepard is my right-hand man. He was in the other day saying, now, my Facebook and Twitter account is having this problem. And I'm saying, Bob, cool. We need to embrace it all the way through, whether we're teenagers or whether we're 80 years old. Technology is moving forward. We need to embrace that. You need to be here now. Quit worrying about what's going on at work. Quit worrying about what's happening tomorrow or what happened yesterday. You cannot go forward driving through the rearview mirror. When you're looking at the rearview mirror and that's all you care about, you're not going to go forward. Be here now. I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. I'm not going to worry about my in bin or how many phone messages are waiting or how many emails. I'm going to be here now because there's people here that I can do business with. I want to be here now and enjoy the time with my employees. Quit worrying about tomorrow. And then you need to get a checkup from the neck up. Get rid of your stinking thinking. And say, it's about me. I can have an attitude to make this work. Well, end with a story. Walt Disney had the #1 cartoon character in the world. Anybody know what that was? Back in 1928? I think I heard it. Nope. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Look it up online. It became the #1 cartoon character in the world, but in order to get it done, he had to sell the rights to a company in New York. And so it was 1928 in March. He went to New York with his wife to say, it's time for me to get a raise. Because we have the #1 cartoon character in the world. And he got there and he was met with the news that you don't own Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. We've already talked to your employees. They work for me now. And you're going to take a pay cut. So what's an entrepreneur to do? I got this from the vault at Disney. It's the Western Union telegram that Walt sent. And if you look on the second line, it says, everything okay. We'll give details when I arrive. And so I've lost all my employees. I've lost my character. I've lost my company. Everything's okay. Details when I arrive. Who thinks like that? I see a whole room full of people who think like that. It's tough. That was a shot in the gut. Everything's okay. Details when I arrive. So, on the 4-day train ride back to LA, he pulled out his pen and he came up with another character. You know what he called it? Mortimer Mouse. And his wife said, way too old, Walt. Let's call him Mickey. And 1 year, Mickey Mouse was the #1 cartoon character in the country. We've had recessions before. We've had tough times before. Everything's okay. We're the answer. You're the answer. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, sir.